everyone. 'Tis I, Madame Askew, and I'm here with my wonderful special guests, Maddox and Kirt Graves. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. I am so thrilled to have you both. Now, you are wonderful artists yourselves, an author, a narrator. You do a lot of incredible work in the independent queer romance space. But how did you meet? What is your meet cute as queer friends on the internet?
Actually, Maz used to have another podcast called the Top to Bottom podcast that she did with her friend, Jess, who I call Jeff. So Jeff and her had this podcast, and they were going to read a book that I had narrated. And this was very early in my narration career, like under 20 books. It was Gail Carriger's The Sumage Solution.
Oh.
It was going to be their book of the month. And I was like, okay, Kirt, you have to start promoting yourself. Reach out to these people and be like, hey, I narrated the book. Do you want to talk to me about it? And they did. So I recorded an interview with them for that one. I think we recorded another interview later for Wolfsong.
Yeah.
So we met online. We were online buddies. And then through Gay Romance Lit convention, we met in person for all of like 5 minutes one time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like, I think we were able to swing by and be like, hi, nice to meet you in person.
Right.
And then
you were, that was, I mean, this was one where Maz was in and out of Gay Rom Lit in like 24 hours, like literally in and out.
Yeah.
So we got like 5 minutes to say hello. And that was the only time we had met in person when all of a sudden, at the really tail end of 2019, I get a message from Maz saying, so I might be moving to Green Bay, and you're the only person I know who lives there. So her husband got a new job. They moved to Green Bay, and we've been sharing an office ever since. Since really like the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah.
No.
It was just one of those weird serendipitous things. Like the likelihood of me moving to where he lives is like, what, 1 in a billion?
I mean, the
like that's
likelihood of
crazy.
anybody moving to Green Bay, Wisconsin.
I know.
I don't even know why I live here.
But I love this meet cute, and I adore that you are sort of following this very modern sort of trajectory as creative people, where you meet in an online virtual space and then serendipity takes hold. And it's also, I think, this wonderful example of how sometimes we just have to create the community we need by taking a bit of a leap and reaching out to people. Kirt, I'm so happy that you did that, because you two do a gorgeous podcast together, and I recommend it to everyone. Like, absolutely, anytime podcasts come up, I'm like, listen, have you heard the good news of Hoop and Fang? You need to check out this podcast. It's so fantastic. When you were in the lockdown and you're working together in your shared office space, doing related but sort of separate work, I mean, narrating an audiobook requires a certain level of solitude and silence. Writing requires a different level of solitude. When you came together, did you sort of birth this idea of the podcast in those early days of the pandemic?
Oh, do you want to take this one, or should I?
Yeah, I mean,
well, no,
yeah, I was like, I don't super remember.
Well,
it was like kind of a long-ish
It's
process.
sort of a long story, but it begins with the rise of artificial intelligence in narrating audiobooks. So we saw this coming on the horizon, and then Spotify bought what was that company called? It doesn't matter. They bought a company that like was second only to Amazon in producing independent audiobooks. And in narrator spaces, we just started looking at this and being like, if audiobooks go the way of music in Spotify, like we're going to have to find another way to make money. Because just narrating isn't going to cut it anymore. And that's when Maz and I started having conversations about like starting Patreons, which we were seeing our contemporaries doing quite successfully. But we were both like, I don't want to be like the main part of a Patreon. I don't want to have to give of myself that much to a Patreon, because like if you're asking people for money, you really have to like show up for them and like
Yes.
let them inside your life. And the thing that I was seeing for most narrators was like the thing they were giving was like access to themselves, and so it was like more interactions and more stories that they would get, and it's like who has the time for that, and not this ADHD little boy. So the compromise was, we were like, well, what if we start a podcast and we do it together, and it is its own magical little thing that neither one of us feels is a direct line into our personal lives, but can bring value. And so that's the Patreon. And in doing so, we can also bring both of our individual careers to the table and talk about our narration and our writing, and bring friends on and talk to them about what they're doing. And so the podcast was really born of the necessity to say, like, we want to do a Patreon, but neither one of us has the ego to do it by ourselves. But if we combine forces, we could do it.
Oh,
and then
and here you are.
Yeah.
And here you are. Your forces are combined.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful alchemy of necessity, because your podcast is stunning. That was my main, not my main introduction, but it was because my dear friend Lady June Squill, who's here chatting, Maz, she took me aside once during tea and she's like, listen, hussy, there are these books. They're about these dinosaurs and they're shifters and they're queer. And I was like, I'm intrigued. Please tell me more. I was not expecting this, but I love Chuck Tingle, so I'm game. Tell me more about dinosaur shifters. And they're fabulous. But I hadn't read very many of your books before you started the podcast. I was like sort of a new fan to your work. And then you started this podcast and I was like, oh, I'm in to this podcast. It's so inspiring. As an artist, I feel very uplifted by listening to your weekly podcast and hearing the way you interact, not just with each other, which is very akin to my experience with my partner who's sleeping in this morning like a hussy. But as he does, he's like, not doing Saturday mornings.
Right.
But also you're uplifting all of these other artists. So it's a very lovely experience. I never would have suspected that you were doing it so you could share less and work less hard, because you're not working less hard. You're absolutely working hard here.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was that we were trying to avoid the work. Mm-hmm. It really was that feeling of like, especially as from a narrator, and I know to a degree the author too, like there's just no separation between you and the work. And so if you're going to sell people on more access, it's just like, how much of my life and my energy, like not even like like working energy, but like mental and emotional energy, can I be willing to open up to people? And especially it's like, it's neither one of us has, and I keep using the word ego, maybe that's not the right word, but neither one of us has the ego to think that we're like entertaining enough for people to pay to have access to us. So we were like, we have to create something that's entertaining.
Yeah, we're very boring.
You may perceive yourselves as boring, but as someone who's listening to your podcast and watching your interaction with each other, you are certainly not boring people at all. You are delightful. But I understand this desire to have a good balance and good boundaries, because parasocial relationships as artists are tricky to navigate. Mm-hmm. And making certain that you have the comfort for your privacy, as well as being able to create art and satisfy your, I don't know, I think of it as my personal responsibility to the people I want to entertain. I always want to show up for my audience and remember that they're the most important part of the process. And I presume there's very similar as people creating art to be consumed, that you want to make certain that it's always good for the audience consuming it. But you also still need time for yourself. So I understand wanting to have that demarcation and a little bit of privacy.
And I guess it's the difference between creating a product and being the product.
Mm-hmm.
Neither
Yeah.
one of us wanted to be the product,
Right.
That's
but we love creating things.
very fair. I appreciate that distinction. And our mutual wonderful friend, Madam Gale, as we call her around here, just wrote an entire series of books exactly about this idea of where the art and the artist collide, and what it means to be consumed by your audience. And so I love this kind of conversation. But you did something more. You said, we want to not be the ones to be consumed. We want to create this thing. And then you were like, but wait, we're excellent queers. We must bring other queers with us. At what moment did you decide that it'd be wonderful to interview other independent artists and bring them onto your show?
Well, I think one of the things that's awesome about having podcasts is it kind of forces us to be extroverts and reach out to people and make friends and those connections that way. So it's kind of a I don't know, a extra bonus for us because we get to elevate our friends, but we also get to meet people we've never met before. Like they reach out to us for interviews. We're making those amazing connections. Hopefully down the road, we're pairing with them for work or collaborations or audiobook situations and deals and things. So it's one of those like, I think right as we were birthing the concept, I think we always wanted to do interviews and make sure that we're reaching out to authors, narrators, and any type of queer creators within the speculative fiction realm. So it's something that I think has always been part of the plan because we just really like connecting with people that way.
Yeah, it was really like the first part of the plan because again, neither one of us thought we were entertaining enough.
Yeah,
On our own.
it's like we need to get people on the show.
We really stumbled into the format of like an episode can just be the two of us talking to each other. Because at first we were like, well, we can do a little bit of that at the beginning, but then we need to get to the interview because that's what people will show up for. And then we were hearing from the listeners that like their favorite part was just us talking, and it was like, great. Then we can take a little break from doing these weekly interviews when life got really busy. And now it's something we can do when we want to and when we have a reason to do it instead of feeling like it has to be a part of every episode.
Yes, because you two are deeply insightful about the process. And one of the things I love is that you're very upfront about the nuts and bolts of things. There never seems to be any artifice. You aren't like trying to keep it in your magician's hat and then pull a rabbit out and be like, no, I won't tell you the process. It's a trick. You're pretty frank about things. But you bring a lot of kindness and empathy to the way you talk about it at the same time. I love this way that you balance the realities and the hardships of being artists with this kind approach. Is that something that you feel you learned as you've been developing your careers, or did you bring that from your life outside of the arts into the world of creating art?
Ooh, I'm gonna let you tackle that first, Maz.
I saw in the chat that apparently I'm very quiet. If I lean closer, is this better? I've got like this mic.
Thank you, Maz. Yeah. Alas, I don't have that kind of control over individual sound, everyone.
Okay. Sorry.
Maz, no, don't.
Oh, I think they meant Kirt, actually.
Kirt.
So I'm allowing the system to automatically change my volume, so maybe that helps.
All right. Well, thank you, Kirt. I don't know. You both sound so perfectly plummy to me. A very like a wonderful cup of tea. It's like, ooh, dulcet tones.
I'm sorry. What was the question? I got super distracted by the volume thing. I apologize.
No, listen. Again, don't apologize. You're perfect and beyond reproach. So clearly, but the question is essentially this approach of empathy and kindness that you have as artists when you talk about the business of being artists, even whilst you're being very honest about the thorny nature of some of the elements of creating art. Is that something you developed before you started creating art, or has that been part of your journey as professional artists that you've sort of found your way into this compassionate approach?
I think it's a little bit of both. So one of my best friends of like 20 years. We met when we were in junior high. She's a professional artist. She does graphic designs professionally. So throughout her career as a graphic design for, major companies and doing freelance, I've watched her struggle so much, like just to keep the lights on and dealing with bad clients and things like that. So I kind of understood it from an author or from an artist point of view. And then as I started doing my own thing with my books and just realizing, how much work not just goes into crafting the story, which is honestly the easiest part. It's everything else that comes after that is grueling. Like figuring out great beta readers, figuring out how you're going to afford to get it edited, or trying to even learn what Facebook algorithms are and how you're going to get this stuff in front of people. Like it was immediately so tough, and I just was not expecting it. But then as I immersed myself in the community and started talking to other peers and stuff like that, everyone was so wonderful and championing sharing knowledge and elevating people and helping you through this. So immediately the space was kind and welcoming, and I was like, okay, that's the bar. That's what I expect from communities, is that everybody lives, it's not a competition. We're all trying to like float to the top. So I'm glad that I didn't have to fight to keep that compassion. I didn't feel like I was ever pitted against my fellow authors. It was always this space of like, oh, we're in this together. Okay. Right. So I haven't had the opportunity to get jaded, which is kind of nice. So I think I got very lucky.
Oh, that is what I want for any artist, is that experience where you show up to a community and you find a place that is supportive. Mm-hmm. In the performing arts, depending on what you do, it's not always that. There's a real tradition of pitting performers against each other. And I come out of the world of opera originally, failed opera singer, and it can be vicious. Even your professors, your instructors, your voice coaches are often looking for, the same space. So they're not necessarily trying to build you up. And I think that this experience is so critical to fall into a community and be supported. I think that's the job of community. And I love that that was your experience as a writer, and that you are continuing that by giving back to your fellow queer, independent authors and narrators in this way. It's so beautiful. Kirt, what about you? What about your experience?
I can echo a lot of that. The narrator community is one of those acting communities where we are really supportive of one another. And we are very open and honest with information and training and mentorships, and we all have a pay it forward mentality. So we were given the leg up when we needed it, and we'll turn around and give it to somebody else. Which, again, I think is really unique in the world of actors. And I know, it's not 100%. There are assholes everywhere. And there are asshole narrators. Of course they exist. But the vast majority have benefited from the help of their peers. And so they're happy to be the person who helps their peers. So that community, I think, very much the same. It was just like what was modeled to me. And since I never saw somebody gatekeeping information, it made me feel really comfortable sharing what I was learning and what I knew. And especially in the world of queer romance and being a gay man myself, and wanting to advocate for more gay actors being the voices of these queer books. There's so few of us that I don't have to worry that hard about opening the door to other gay actors. And I certainly don't have to worry about opening the door to actors of color, because there's not enough of them either. I will say, if any straight white guys reach out to me trying to get into narration, I'll be like, no, thank you. You can, here's the communities you can go to find somebody else to help, but there's enough of you. I don't need more of you.
Well, and you're right. There are members of our broader community who do need someone to make sure that they are pulling out that chair at the table, dusting it off and saying, come in, sit at the table. Not only have I saved a space for you, but I've got a menu to like beat this poor metaphor to death. And I've even got like some amuse-bouche for you to get you started. So I think it's really important because we do have only so much bandwidth in any one person. And there are just some communities that already have more tools and more access. And so when we're taking what time we have to help build other people up, I think it's important to think about what access they have.
And again, I won't get in anybody's way, but I don't need to be pulling people up the ladder who started on 3 rungs ahead of me.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know.
So you mentioned something. I want to get into it a little bit. We're all queers here. It's so nice. I love being in the rainbow radiance of our little chat. But you talked about a little bit of being amongst a minority of narrators, that there aren't that many queer performers acting as book narrators in queer romance spaces. And Maz, I know that there are other queer authors out there. I've met some even who are writing books, but also even in the queer romance space, that is not necessarily the majority of writers. So can you talk a little bit about how your queer identity and your desire for community intersects with this space of creating queer media in a space that does not always have a majority of queer folks creating that media? That's a big question. So
it is. It's a lot. I think my journey into queer romance kind of, with a lot of people, I mirror this. It kind of helped them discover who they are. Like I was questioning back years ago when I first picked up queer romance. And then as I got, read more and got further into the community, it really helped me solidify what I kind of already knew about myself and realize that I was queer, where I was in my 30s at this point. So it took me a while to get to that place. And I think a lot of people who create this medium, a lot of them are, cis, straight women in particular. But there's so many of us that as we are in these spaces are realizing we're not as straight as we thought, and allowing ourselves to create this art and to consume it is helping us kind of allow ourselves to be who we really are, and surround ourselves with other people who are having these shared experiences. So while I think definitely it's still the majority of, it being cis and straight, a lot of these people are allies, or at least I hope they are if they're in this space. But a good chunk of us are not as straight as maybe we allow ourselves to be represented in these public spaces. I know plenty of people who, they're just not comfortable saying that out loud yet, and they're representing themselves a certain way because they just can't, maybe. So I think it's one of those things where I think we still have a lot of work to do as far as amplifying own voice stories and making sure those people are getting the attention that they need to. But it's also worth saying a lot of us aren't as straight as maybe we're showing to everyone else. But yeah, it's a complicated thing. It's a thing that comes up quite a bit. And I think it's one of those conversations we need to keep having. We need to, platform and talk about and really kind of dissect anytime we get a chance to kind of keep the doors open and let people know that this community is fluid and ever changing, and it's growing every year. It's more and more people who are joining, who are part of the Rainbow Mafia, who maybe just didn't really have a chance to celebrate that yet.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's a sad reality of life that a lot of times progress gets made first by the allies. It takes a white straight person to bust down the door and be like, let's tell gay stories before gay people start to get to tell gay stories. Or it takes white creators to write about people of color before people of color get to actually write about themselves. In many ways, the majority gets to decide what market value an identity has. So, it's unavoidable to have people in spaces who are creating things that don't mirror their personal life. I think as long as we are conscious of that and we are respectful about that, we have no problems. I am never somebody who wants to like dictate what certain people can or cannot create based on their identity. Coming at it very specifically, though, from the acting side, I mean, we are just at a time when I would love to see more queer people playing queer characters. I feel like we have reached a point in our and all entertainment, not just audiobooks, but like TV and movies in particular, where it's, you know, they wouldn't think of like casting a Scarlett Johansson to play an Asian role anymore. Mm-hmm. Like those mistakes have been made. We wouldn't do that anymore. Yeah. And not that race and sexuality have a one-to-one match, but when your stories are being told by somebody else over and over and over and over and over again, and you never see the story being told by somebody who has the lived experience as a queer person, it devalues you. Mm-hmm. It says that, okay, we're comfortable enough as a society for the fake, the faux, the made up person, but we're still not comfortable with the real people. And so actors as representatives in storytelling, who the person is who's playing the part still matters. And I would love for us to get to some utopic future where anybody can play any role, but we all know things don't go both ways. There are doors that are closed to me because I'm an openly queer actor. And I'm not advocating for closing doors, but I am saying, like, if it doesn't go both ways, then maybe it's the responsibility of the actors who are getting that benefit to turn around and say, like, oh, actually, I'm going to let someone pass me. Yeah. You know, and I'm going to open the door for somebody else. And so, and the other thing too is, like, I am a cis white middle class guy. I still live in a lot of privilege. I am not hurting for work, so I have the privilege to advocate for this without worrying about losing my livelihood. I was listening to a podcast, and I forget who it was or who said it, but they were talking about Norman Lear it was Julia Louis-Dreyfus was talking about how Norman Lear taught her that celebrity is capital and you have to spend it. And I feel the same about privilege. Privilege is capital. You have to spend it. I have the privilege to be the one out front saying, let's hire more gay people for gay roles. And then other people can bring their perspectives. And hopefully, as a community, we find a really healthy, happy middle ground.
I love that way that you describe that process. And this concept of saying, I have enough and someone else can have this opportunity right now. I think it's beautiful. And it is part of what I adore about both of you and your approach to Hoof and Fang and your podcast and everything. Because you do this beautiful thing that you set up an opportunity for other small indie authors who would not otherwise have access to ink. Listen, Kirt, my friend that I just made, that's a tangent. You really do have the most gorgeous voice, and you have spoiled me as an audiobook listener. I barely listened to audiobooks before I started listening to you, and then I was like, now I have opinions of what good is. But you are making yourself and Maz, you're both offering this opportunity to authors who could not otherwise afford to have really high quality audiobooks at a time when that is so helpful to authors. And I just love to watch this way that you said, listen, we've got enough and we want to open that door and let some people that we see coming up have this opportunity. You are still creating an equitable situation where you're not, beggaring yourselves doing this, but you are making it available, I think, in a way that people would not normally have access, which is gorgeous. Pardon me. I'm having a little allergy attack, which is
no.
so helpful in the middle of this. So thank you for your patience. But I love this, and I love this idea, as Evie says, privilege as capital is an awesome way to look at it. And I'm so happy you brought this up and that we're able to have this conversation today. My dear friend, Bill Zilla, hello, Bill Zilla, it says, this is a good point, and it is something I think we are all cognizant of. Hollywood clearly is most about making money. But I think the big thing now is that the audience is less willing to accept this. And the audience has the power to push back and make these things not as effective, right?
Well, and the point is well made and well taken, because that is absolutely true. And that's where a lot of times I feel like the onus falls on the actors to look at a role and say, like, you know what, actually, I know 10 people who could do this just as well as me, but they actually have a connection to the material. Whereas I would be learning an accent or pretending to be something I'm not. And it's also, it's the idea that somebody, and I know it's true because it's true in audiobooks and it's true everywhere, that there are people who just are more popular and like they're one-click narrators for people. And you want to hire the one-click narrator because then it's a better chance of getting a return on your investment. And that's not to be ignored. But that's where, again, then I think you have to look to the narrator to say, like, actually, I don't know that I'm the right person to tell your story, but here's a person who I love, who I think would be great. And I will do everything I can to help lift this person up, Yeah. And that's part of what being an ally means. It's not just quietly saying no to roles. It's also turning around and being like, hey, here's a person of color who I know is fantastic at this work, but doesn't get the same opportunities I do. Like, have you considered casting them? And celebrating them, If it's Pride Month, like, talk about your queer colleagues who are doing great work and lift them up, instead of just talking about the queer books you've done.
Right.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And also, as an aside, do that all the time. Like, Pride Month is great. Black History Month is great. I want to celebrate those periods and those moments at a national and international level. But also, 12 months a year, my darlings, is a good time to be performing this kind of service to your community. Right. So, Kirt, you're so thoughtful and you're so wise in your approach, and your voice is so beautiful, and I love that you are both so thoughtful. But I'm curious, so we've been having very serious conversation, and I love those. Actually, I love them too much. I'm like a hussy for it. But what, I'd like to take us into some fun veins as well, and I'm curious if you've had a moment during this process of, like, uplifting other voices and creating the podcast. What has been like a funny surprise? Something that took you aback, but in a good way? Because I know there are also things that take us aback and we're like, well, I did not see that coming and it was very bad. So, but a nice one.
Oh, that was tricky.
Oh, well, I like to be tricky. I'm a strumpet professionally. But I do have a compliment for you, Kirt, from Commodore Evie, who is one of our cheekiest of strumpets. Hello, Commodore. It's beautiful.
Greetings.
Yeah, a melted caramel voice. Absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty shocked that we got so much overwhelming support. So when we created the Patreon, we created 2 tiers. One is a reader level and one is a listener level. I assumed most people would come in at the $5 reader level, and maybe a few people would do the listener level where we produce audiobooks and you get access to the audio. The vast majority of our subscribers are in the listener category. They value audiobooks that much. And so that to me was a really lovely surprise, but it has put a lot of pressure on having to get that
Yeah, that's for
to
sure.
produce that work. You know, once you're like, oh, here's an idea we could try, and then it's like, oh, okay, wow, now we really have to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is a good
So
point. So
And it's a
it's
grueling
a good
show.
thing and bad thing.
yeah, and
You have
we're a year in, and we still haven't like figured out the perfect way to do this. A lot of it's still being done like last minute. We're trying to figure out when do we find the time to get this audiobook done every month. So
Yeah.
but it's a learning process, and we're very transparent about when we can and cannot get things done.
No, your Patreon is wonderful, and by the by, everyone, I do recommend the Patreon because yes, at the listener level, you get like an audiobook a month essentially, and which is the reader level is also lovely, by the by. But what a deal! And also, you talk about Animorphs.
Yeah. That was that. I think that one took me by surprise because I never read the Animorphs growing up. Like I just missed that boat completely. So when Kirt pitched it, I was like, sure, it sounds fun, whatever. I am so into this series now. Like I am a fan. I geek out about it. Like my partner Alex, every time I'm on the couch reading one, I'll be sitting there just like mumbling to myself. He's like, did Marco piss you off again? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just, I'm so fully invested into this series. So that's definitely something that took me by surprise.
Right. Well, and Shifters brought us together, and like
Yeah.
even the name of our podcast is a reference to the Shifters that first brought us into the genre. She wrote Centaurs, I narrated Wolves, so Hoof and
Yeah.
Fang, here we are. And like, it was like, well, the original Shifters in my life were the Animorphs. When I was in elementary and middle school, loving these books. So who knew all these years later? I mean, a few years later, not that many years. A few years later, I would be here basically making a living talking about boys who turn into other things and kiss each other.
And it's such a delightful gift that you give us as a community of readers, these boys kissing each other and being happy and queer joy on the page. Now, you know, I think most of us, myself included, are huge readers of fantasy, sci-fi, speculative fiction, all of this beautiful genre of fiction. And one of the things I love about romance is that it is an umbrella that can cover those things. Like you can have a romance that is in all of those genres. So that's like the ultimate multi-class experience. I love romance and I love spec fic and I love them together. But I'm especially keen on weird shifter experiences. And I'm not going to lie, the dinosaurs did it for me, Maz. And
Yeah, that's
not
pretty weird.
no shame in that game, but I was like, oh, I didn't know that I needed this, but I do. This just occurred to me as you were speaking, Kirt, and I was thinking about my personal interest in the genre and Maz's experience writing. You know, we've got centaurs and dinosaurs, and now we have necromancers. It's beautiful, Maz. Great catalogue of works. Do you feel like there's something very queer about shapeshifters ultimately? Like we're in the closet and then we transform and we're out of the closet? Oh no, maybe that metaphor is too much of a stretch. And it did just occur to me. So I throw it out to the both of you.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some parallels, and I think that's why a lot of people were attracted to the shifters. It's, you know, the thing that you keep hidden inside, and you know, as the beast comes out, it gets to be your true self kind of thing. I definitely think there's a reason that we gravitate towards that, being able to that duality of who you are. And I think these days too, we kind of celebrate the monster side more than anything, which is great. So we elevate the thing inside you that's kind of been locked away and clawing to be at the surface. Now when it finally emerges, it's usually not a scary thing anymore. Now it's like this big amazing thing, and the other person's like, holy crap, you're a werewolf, that's amazing, instead of like, oh, you're a monster and that's gross. Like we kind of flipped it to where it's like the monster is celebrated, and I think that's as queer people, of course we like love that. And I think I'm just such an animal freak that I just think it's cool when something turns into a monster. But like if you really drill down into the psychology of it, I can be like, oh yeah, I can see why I'm really attached to that, because that was, I didn't know that about myself for a long time. So when that side got to pop out, then it was like the thing that got to be celebrated. So yeah, I can see why that's a trope we lean on a lot.
I love that. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not just like batting around in the dark. It felt like very relevant in the moment. In the moment. Right. Yeah.
And I think that's true too of all sci-fi and fantasy. I think queer people have been attracted to stories that don't take place in the real world, because for so long the stories that were told about us that existed in the real world were not stories we wanted to read. It was all just bury your gays, or queer sidekicks, or Paul Lind as the sassy neighbor, and it's like, well, we don't need to live in that world. Let's go live in a fantasy world. And then shifters come along, and it's like, oh, a person who can, and usually around adolescence, discovers that they have some cool extra special abilities that they can transform, and some people may fear it, but a lot of people will love it, and it will turn out to be a good thing. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's a great metaphor. And now I'm so happy I asked. So I'll pretend that I'm like very smart and I thought about that in advance. Of course, there's clear evidence that's not the case, but we can pretend. But let's also talk a little bit about the queer joy and the experience of like I love this. The queer as villain trope is also really threadbare. Although I'm ready
for that to come back around, though.
Let's get some
be evil again.
Me and Alex, he was like, "Why aren't there more drag queen like villains?" And I was like, "We'll see it, and it'll be great."
Because they are, because too many people think they are in real life. But
yeah, I know. But like eventually, when we swing back around, like hell yeah, I cannot wait for that.
Yeah.
And Jinx Monsoon did a wonderful job on Doctor Who being villainous and very campy.
Did she. Yes.
She's like chewed the scenery in the best way, way. Yes. Absolute praise. But yeah, I mean, all of these things come round on a cycle, and there is joy in like the camp and the over-the-top nature of that kind of villainy. Villains are so fun to portray, to play. It's not fun to be villainized in real life,
right?
But it's the fantasy can be fun, and shifters used to be the monsters, and they used to be villains. The Wolfman was not the hero. At most, he was the tragic, victim of his story for a long time. But we've had this transformation, as you noted. And now there's this opportunity to create a more joyful experience and not simply to bury our gaze. Although Chuck Tingle can do whatever he wants. And if I liked horror, I would probably live in that book. But
I haven't read it yet. I auditioned for it and didn't get it, so I'm still a little salty. But my friend Andre got it, so I can't be mad.
That's good. That's good.
I got the audiobook. I just haven't started it yet. I love horror. So I'm like, I'm so excited.
Listen,
I probably wouldn't have picked it up except I got to read the first chapter for the audition, and I was like, I'm hooked. I got more.
I love Chuck Tingle so much, and I'm actually a little afraid that I'll be too afraid because I'm not much of a horror reader. And so I'm like, I don't know. There are no Hugo Awards taking unfair advantage of gentlemen. Am I going to be up for the horror from Chuck Tingle? I'm out. But this is the joy of this modern time, even though queer spaces and queer artists and queer people, especially our trans siblings, are really under a lot of attack on the national and international political stage. We are collectively finding all of these places for community and joy and connection. And something the two of you do very specifically with your art is that you provide joy to many queer people. But what I have a question for you is, what is a highlight, one of your peak moments? I know there are many, so just a particular highlight moment of queer joy for you as artists, a moment when you just felt like you had arrived?
Oh man. Probably the first time I was at a signing, I had somebody who came and I could tell it took them a minute to like work up the courage to talk to me, which I was like, I don't even know what to do with that. But they came over and they talked about how like they, you know, like the stories, but really they kind of wouldn't allow themselves to be like a dinosaur kid anymore. Like when they were growing up, they were very femme presenting, and it wasn't cool for them to be into it when they were a kid. And since then, they had like transitioned, and it was like this coming back around to it, where they just had not let themselves enjoy dinosaurs and like romance and stuff like that. But then, they were getting back into it and remembering how much they liked about dinosaurs, and now they're like, they're who they really are, and that was like part of their journey. And I was just like, I don't know what to say, like it was one of those, like I was so happy, but then like it was a weird thing of like imposter syndrome immediately. It was just like I didn't feel like I deserved to be part of that journey, even though it happened and I was, you know what I mean? Like it was just, I don't know, it still like floors me, and I'm just so proud and happy for that person, and that they remembered how much they loved dinosaurs, which seems so silly as I talk about it, but like it was really important for them. So it was, I don't know, it was just this amazing feeling to be part of somebody's personal journey like that. It was cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I've had many. If it was just about work, I would say Stephen Salvatore's "And They Lived" was an amazing book that met me right where I needed it to, and I had a fantastic time narrating it, and I'm so proud of the work that we did together on that. But if it's about like a real life moment, there have been so many. I will talk about a recent one, which was the Rainbow Readers Cruise that I went on in August, which was the inaugural convention led by Joel Leslie, who's another narrator. And what was so fantastic about that, which ties into what Maz was saying, was the community that was there. And of course, it always feels good when somebody gives you a compliment and likes what you do. And that's this is very isolated work. So the few opportunities you have to have somebody be like, I love your work, can buoy you for months. But more importantly than that, there were more queer men at this convention than I had ever seen at a convention like this before. And so it was this opportunity to find some community for myself at a male-male romance convention and like make new friends. And like that was a queer joy that I hadn't experienced much in the realm of the work that I do. Certainly lots of parasocial relationships and good friends that I now have and have had the chance to meet. But to meet someone in person and discover like, oh my gosh, we have a lot in common. Like, let's like, do we be friends? Like, is this a thing we do as adults? We be friends now? So that was a recent one that still stands out as very special.
Oh my goodness. Well, you both glowed when you were talking about those experiences, which like gave me a little like, afterglow over here too. But I love that for you, but for both of you, but Kirt especially. I'm so happy for you that you got that connection, because it is important. It's so important. And I wish the Rainbow Readers Cruise lots of success in the future. That sounds amazing. Yeah. So before we go into our sort of question and answer segment with everyone here in the comments, a reminder, my darling sparkle glitter unicorns in the comments, please post your questions with a question mark at the front. Madam Gail has taught us the way, and it works so well. Will help me see your questions, and I do want them, and I tried not to ask any of the like obvious ones and to ask really weird questions so that you would have space to ask questions as well. So I do want them. But before we go into that segment, I know from listening to your podcast that you are often reading and working with books in a sort of professional work capacity, so you don't get as much time to simply read for pleasure, which is like one of the pitfalls of being creators of wonderful books. But my question is, a little cheekily, if there is a book that you could recommend to people, beyond your own. And by the way, if you're not reading Maz and you're not listening to Kirt, treat yourself. They're wonderful, clearly. But something you think everyone needs to read. A peak queer romance in your list of recommendations.
I just, after Rainbow Readers and meeting the author Dominic Lim, I listened to his audiobook for All the Right Notes, and I highly recommend it. Great narration by somebody who doesn't do a lot of audiobooks, so it's sort of a different take on audiobook narration. Filipino representation, queer representation, Asian American representation, and just a really delightful story that also has some angst, which I love. And because it's an audiobook about a musician, there is also an original song, and they did some really cool stuff with the music and just the setup for that book that I think makes the audio itself very special.
Well, now I have to listen to it.
All the Right Notes by Dominic Lim. And if you're a Broadway person, you will not be left wanting.
Ooh, awesome. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So mine's not a romance, but it's part of my personality. I freaking love Gideon the Ninth so much that I bought myself the special edition one. I love this. It's lesbian necromancers in space, and it's my favorite thing. So,
you can make an argument. I don't think it. There's some at least romantic elements, right? So
yeah, I think it's yes. I definitely ship the main characters, even though I don't think they're actually supposed to be a couple. When I actually looked into past interviews, and she was like, "No, they're supposed to be siblings." So I was like, "Oh, they're not." So, but yeah, no, I love this series so much. So yeah, that's. Even though it's not a romance, I love the world building. I love the prose. I read this book read the series and loved it, not just because it's amazing. I was like, I need to step up. You know what I mean? It made me want to be a better writer. And so it's just been explosive. I love this series so much. But outside of that, going back more into traditional romance, anything TJ Klune does, he's another one that I read and I'm like, yeah, one of these days I'm gonna make people cry like this. I'm gonna aspire to be that. But yeah, other than Gideon the Ninth, anything TJ does is chef's kiss to me.
Under the Whispering Door. My goodness, if I need a cry,
that one killed me, and that's partially Kirt's fault because if he reads it to me, I definitely cry. That's just fucking guaranteed. Excuse me.
No, we get one F-bomb per show.
I took it.
Okay.
So thank you. That's my personal rule. There's actually no one coming by and going, "You've had too many. We're cutting you off." So. Thank you for those recommendations. I posted some of the links in the comments, everyone. TJ Klune, I have to give much praise to. I started with Lightning Struck Heart. It's a great place to start if you want something with laughter and joy. But also, listen, House of the Cerulean Sea just had the sequel come out, so you should probably read that and then read the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
instant New York Times bestseller, TJ Klune. Who'd have thunk all those years ago?
Right? Yeah. From werewolf shifters to making all of us weep. Although Kirt,
those werewolf shifters make people weep too.
Oh yeah, I cried.
He was an angst monster all the way back then.
Oh yeah. So I tried reading the books first, and I was like, they're good, obviously. But then I picked up your audio narration, and it was like, wrecked. So you are partly responsible for that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So I have a very special guest to join our special guests to help with the question and answer segment. I would like to bring on to you our resident Chaos Gremlin and Dinosaur. Hello, Mathematica Chaos Gremlin.
Hello.
As a representative of the Dinosaur Nation today, the queer Dinosaur Nation, do you have a question for our delightful guests?
I do. So I wanted to say first, the dinosaur shapeshifters books have brought me so much joy, and I did not know that I needed dinosaur drag queens in my life, but I did. But I was wondering, do either of you have a favorite section of those books or a favorite aspect of them?
Oh man. I don't know. That's tough. I mean, I still think one of my favorite things I've ever written was Simon and Dalton breaking into one of those really cheesy parks, because
That
I've
was
always
going to be my answer too.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's the first book, which I feel like I'm cheating because it's like the first one I did, but I love those really terrible tourist traps, and writing that was so much fun because I got to be such a jerk about like how I feel about what those dinosaurs look like in those parks, but then have somebody on the other side who's like, this is just for fun, you're being ridiculous. And I mean, Kirt handled that scene so well too when he did the audio, so it's like now it has an even better place in my heart, because when I listened to it, I was cracking up like I didn't write it. Like it was just ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's my favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite scenes too.
Yeah.
I also like the one, and I don't remember what book it's in, but they're in a museum and like they have to hide as their dinosaur self or like just stay very still, and like that cracked me up too. Right? I was like, just don't move, and they'll think you're an exhibit. And it was like, yes.
But the bit in that scene when they're talking about the cloaca, I don't know.
Cloaca.
I am not a science person. I'm a weird performer. That left me gasping with laughter, and I absolutely listened to it. So again, the fault is both of yours. The interaction was so hilarious. It's wonderful. I think that is book 3?
That's book 3, King and Queen, and that whole Swiss Army knife of butthole thing is an actual line from a real article that was penned by Riley Hart, which is one of my favorite science communicators. They're a trans lady, and she's amazing. I've got like all of her books, A+, definitely worth looking into.
Just hearing you say it out loud again. All right, Mathematica. Do you have? I'll give you another question here before I go into the comments. See if we have any questions there. Do you have another question for our wonderful guests? I know you're a dinosaur and you're a very busy dinosaur. You've got a lot going on. You've got some crushing to do. You've probably got some raptors to eat.
I'm trying to think of another good question. I guess maybe what got you interested in writing about dinosaurs in the first place? And things like that.
I was obviously a kid who loved dinosaurs, but I actually went to college and was minoring in paleontology, decided to dual major it eventually. So I got into it. I got back into it in college, and then a couple of years later, when I ran out of money and couldn't go to digs anymore and stuff, I paired up with the Society of it's the Mongolian Society for Paleontology, and they actually do outreach and stuff within Mongolia to help with their paleontology. And so I ran their Twitter account for a little while, so I was able to go to this huge paleontology conference one year and meet a bunch of paleontologists and hang out with them. So it was just one of those, like, I immersed myself back into the science and just got to nerd out really hard. And then it's been one of those passion things that I've kept up with for years. Like, I go and read articles as they're posted. I listen to I Know Dino podcast every week. Like, I'm still just a huge nerd when it comes to paleontology in general, but vertebrate paleontology, dinosaurs specifically. So this was one of those, like, I don't know. I wrote Smash and Grab for me. We were in the middle of moving. It was like this weird life transition. So I wrote it because I thought it was funny, and then it ended up just kind of popping off, which was great. But yeah, it's just I just deeply love these animals so much, and it's been part of who I am for a long time. So I'm just so happy that I've been able to meet other like dino nerds like in this process. Like, it's been amazing. I have a question. Is that thing incredibly hot? Because when I was in one, it almost cooked me alive.
It's not too bad. The fan is going directly on me. The fan that's inflating it.
Yeah.
My animals are thoroughly confused, though. My cat took one look at me and was like, "Nope, I'm out." One dog keeps trying to play with me, and the other one is like, "Mom's being weird again. I'm gonna go nap on the couch."
Love it.
Mathematica, thank you for this. I will fess up that this is something that has been in the works and planned since Mathematica and Lady June Squirrel heard that you all had agreed to be my guests. A great excitement, and there had to be Dino Rep. Well, thank you, my darling. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to send you back into the ether, and I will see you later. Thank you, Mathematica. All right, we've got some questions. But that, Maz, Kirt, listen, we love the combination of the two of you and the dinos. We could not resist. So thank you. Right, our first.
Nice done. Good bit. Good bit.
Mathematica is wonderful. She's a pip. She's part of our weird steampunk team of tea goblins, and they're wonderful. So, all right, we've got a question. What's your favorite dinosaur? For both of you and me as well, apparently. So, but would you be so kind? Kirt, would you like to lead us off?
Okay, so I am not a dinosaur kid or really a dinosaur person. So my childhood reference to dinosaurs was The Land Before Time. So I'm going to say my answer is a long neck.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically Littlefoot. So whatever that is in real life, that. I like the big ones with the long necks, and I like giraffes now, so...
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect.
Something about long necks I find attractive. You know what? Men with long necks are pretty attractive too.
We're seeing a pattern.
Very on brand. Yeah. Very consistent. Beautiful. Maz?
What would that dinosaur be, Maz? What would a long neck be?
Probably either an apatosaurus or I'd say apatosaurus would be my guess. So I have 5. I don't have a top one.
Jesus.
I have 5. So
just share.
If you want to come back to me, it's fine because I will be long-winded about this.
All right. Well, we're going to finish with you then, because mine is very simple. I like a triceratops because they just look so dramatic with that frill, and I love it. I love hats. They feel like a dinosaur wearing a hat, and I'm just about that life. So very easy. And I've liked a triceratops since I was wee. And I would really like to ride one, which is probably unreasonable because they would definitely not be about that life. But I would saddle up and ride a triceratops with glitter through the Pride Parade. It'd be so perfect. Right. Yeah. So, Maz, your 5 dinos, please.
Allosaurus is the first one. It is the true Jurassic King. Then we have Borealis pelta, which is the mummified nodosaur that they found in Canada, which I got to visit. Beautiful. If you're ever at the Royal Tyrrell Museum, go see it. Coolest thing I've ever seen. After that would be a brachiosaur, which is similar to an apatosaur, like long neck, but their necks, instead of going out, they go up, and they're very cool. Then the Regaloceratops is what Royal is, one of my favorite ceratopsians ever, because he's got those cool little diamond on the frills and these like cute little horn, and I think it's so cute. And then the last one, I waffle a lot, but I'll go with Utahraptor. Like the 5th place kind of jumbles around a lot, but Utahraptor, the biggest of the raptors, big feathery thing. Also Dalton, who's my baby from Smash and Grab. So those are my favorites.
So when you were writing these, actually they are delightful, these dinosaur shifter romance. When you were writing them, did you have an idea for the dinosaurs in advance? Did you like have a list and go, I'm going to write romances for each of these dinosaurs, I know who they are? Or were you sort of inspired with each book, like, when I wrote about that dinosaur and now I want to bring this dinosaur on board?
No, the dinosaurs are first. I had my top 5. I was like, well, I have to do T-Rex. Everybody loves T-Rex, so that's the leader. Utahraptor was the first one I wanted to do because everyone, like, I see so many people being like, oh, I love a raptor, and it's like the naked one from Jurassic Park, and I was like, it is my job to fix this. So like I had everybody picked out. I knew Spinosaurus was going to be grumpy, so that's Baja. Regaloceratops, I was like, well, we're going to do that. He's going to be the cool IT guy and a pansexual storm like myself, so that's royal. So like I just had all the dinosaurs picked out, and then their personalities were crafted after, like their human sides were crafted afterwards.
I love this, that you were like, I have got to save the world from thinking the naked raptor is the only option. I must change this by writing an entire series of dinosaur shifter romances. Thank you for your service. Right, so we've got, what are your thoughts on the Colombian
Titanoboa?
Titanoboa. Thank you so much. Yeah. Evie.
I mean, I freaking think it's cool. Like I love giant anything. So like the megalodons, the titanoboas, anything that's like what we see nowadays but huge is just instant horror movie classic top tier monster for me. So super cool. I don't think I'd ever want to see one and like alive, but I think the fact they exist is dope.
I had to Google it. That is a basilisk. That is not that is
right?
literally an evil creature. So
they're not evil.
Well,
they're just big and kind of scary.
Oh, Kirt, as we are clearly all very delighted by the dinosaur experience, I have a question for you.
mm-hmm.
What is your particular like niche nerddom, your little thing that you hyperfocus nerd out about that might surprise people?
I don't know that it's surprising. I mean, I think mine is like superheroes, like X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one for me growing up. That was like my entry into sci-fi fantasy storytelling. Other than the Animorphs, which was probably even earlier or around the same time. But yeah, the X-Men and again another analogy or metaphor for the queer experience, and gaining powers around adolescence, and then being treated as different, and having to find community with found family. I mean, yeah, they're my special nerd little family.
So my question as a follow-up, who is a top tier superhero from the X-Men who's like, and you can give us 5.
I like all the ladies. Storm, Jean Grey as the Phoenix. Yeah. Psylocke is one of my favorite ones. It's the ladies for me. The guys are all kind of duds. But Magneto's pretty cool. But Magneto's practically a drag queen, so yeah.
I feel like
when I played the video games, I wanted to be the ladies.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. I feel like we have to, I mean, we're all adults here, but I was like, we have talked about dinosaurs, and I have learned so much about dinosaurs from your books, Mads. Maybe that was not the intent, but I spent a lot of time on Wikipedia going, all right, but what is this? What does it look like? And what does the gender mean? Oh, yeah. Kirt. That is, listen, that's a trick.
Yeah.
How's that work?
There's not a lot of consensus on how to say these dinosaur names.
Oh, it's a tomato kind of thing. Like everyone pronounces it a little differently.
So you get into a thing where people are like, no, I like the Germanic approach to Latinate names.
Mm-hmm.
No, I prefer the Italian approach to Latinate names. I bring an Italian flair to dinosaurs. Is this part of the experience for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to try to figure out the best way to piss the least amount of people off. And you can't ever please everybody. But
that's
dinosaur names have been the hardest words to look up how to pronounce because there just is no consensus. So you can listen to 50 examples and you'll have 10 different kinds spread equally across the 50 examples. And it's like, well, then what is it?
Yeah.
What is it? Who's the expert? Who do I go to and be like, well, this person gets to be right?
I think this is a place where I, as a reader, have a real advantage because I'm like, whatever Kirt says is correct.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah. Whatever you say, you speak it into law at that point.
I was just like, well, Kirt knows. Kirt is correct. That's how you say it. And that's how I say it now.
Yeah.
So
Kirt chose which one to go with. Although I will say, like, one of Giganotosaurus, is that, am I saying that one? Giganata? Does that have the right amount of syllables? Giganotosaurus, I will say, like, that one was one that I've seen a lot of people mess up, and like there's pretty much consensus that that's a hard G in both cases. It's like a gigabyte, not a giant thing, whereas a lot of people, I think, want to go giant with the soft G. And that's just, you gotta do your research, man.
Yes.
Because that one really was consensus.
I love that there was consensus. Also, the Giga sounds good to my ear. We've got a comment. This isn't a question so much as a comment. The audiobook for the Shifters series had Mathematica laughing at work so often that she thoroughly confused her co-workers and had to tell them all about the books. Thank you.
Love it.
Doing the good work, spreading the good news of dinosaur shifters everywhere is very important, and the joy of that experience. You've brought a lot of joy to so many people, both of you, with your work, and you continue to provide more books, more joy through Hoof and Fang podcast. If there is one bit of advice you would like to give to people who are thinking about getting into writing queer romance or becoming book narrators, what would it be?
I think for writing, definitely lean on the community. Like if you're going into this cold, there's so many good resources, and we're ready to help. We'll point you in the right direction. We'll help you find beta readers, alpha readers. Even if we can't do it ourselves, we know people who can jump in. We'll help with marketing. Like we're definitely the community that I hope other communities aspire to be like, where you're never going to walk into these spaces and feel like there's gates up or that you're not allowed to sit with us or anything like that. Like we cannot wait for more people to join. Like we want more authors. We want more stories. We want you to put those books out in the world. So if you're ever at a point where you're like, okay, I got this manuscript going, where do I start? If you have me on social media, ping me. I'll let you know like where I started. I'll let you know the pages to follow and who to tap and things like that. Like the community is amazing. So even if it feels daunting and overwhelming, you do have a good, strong community to lean on. So don't be afraid to do that.
Oh, thank you. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best education and training for an audiobook narrator is just listening to audiobooks. So listen to as many as you can, identify what it is you like about those narrations, and then emulate it and create your own style.
Beautiful. Thank you. And, a microphone, right? Good microphone.
I mean, there's a lot of other investments that have to happen before you can charge money for it. But first and foremost, make sure you like audiobooks, and then know what it is you like about them, so you know what you're aiming for. Because there's so many different styles, and like you have to find your own voice. So,
and that's a big debate in the community about the styles people like. I see readers talking at length about what they like. My introduction to things I like was you, Kirt. So I'm just like, where are more Kirts? I know that makes me very biased, but I'm just like, I'm looking for that quality, the really beautiful plummy voice, and the way in which you are able to really make each character their own in the story, I think is lovely. But you also talk about some of this process on the podcast. So everyone, go listen to the podcast. It's excellent. I love it. It's great for sewing corsets too, by the way. So ask me how I know. No, you all know how I know. So before we go into the final bit, does anyone have any questions in the comments? This is your last opportunity to get them in. And I hope that we can visit with Kirt and Maz sometime again in the future, because you're delightful and I've had ever so much fun with both of you today. You've been wonderful. Thank you for your time.
This has been
Thank
a
you
lot
so
of
much
fun.
for having
Thank you for
us.
having us. Yeah.
You are so welcome. Do you have any new projects coming out? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Anything that maybe just released with necromancers or something like that? I don't know.
So I've got the last in the Wild Contract series comes out on Halloween. It'll be Save the Vampire, so it'll wrap up the series. So that is about to release in like a month, and then we have a Relic short story available on our Patreon if you're a fan of Baja and Jackson. It's this fun, short, little spicy read. We let our Patreon members vote on who the couple was going to be and how spicy they wanted it. So we have that out, and it's fun. I was really happy to be back in their heads again. So, but yeah, those are the two newest things on my front, and I'm super excited about.
Delightful. And by the way, those books about the necromancer, they're so great. They are fantastic. Oh my gosh. Find the Gin. Find the Gin is the first one, correct? And yes. I loved the dinosaur books so much. I was like, listen, I'll read anything that Maz writes. At this point, you're an Ardo read for me. And again, Lady June School was like, listen, you've got to read about this like cute little chaos gremlin necromancer and his experience. And I was like, okay, sign me up. They're wonderful, in other words, everyone. So read them so you can be with me on Halloween reading the final one and weeping and laughing and all the things and bonding with Kevin the fish. So I love that damn fish. Kirt, what have you got coming down the pipeline?
Well, I actually start recording Steal the Key, the second book in the Wild Contract series this week. So I have that to look forward to coming up in the very near future. I have no idea when the audiobook actually comes out, but I get to record it this week. And then other than that, I mean, I can barely remember what I'm recording right now, let alone what I recorded 2 months ago and is about to come out. So I just say, go to Audible, look up my name, and that service or Libro will tell you what I have coming out soon, because I never know.
That's very fair. You are prolific. You are prolific, and you have a wonderful back catalogue of things, including the wonderful San Andreas Shifter books from Gail, so much from TJ Klune. And really, I do that on Audible, where I'm just like, what has Kirt got? I'd like a
sometimes too, because it's like, I don't know. There's always such a gap between when I finish it and when it actually comes out that it's like, oh yeah, that book. I liked that book.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Couldn't have told you anything about it 2 seconds before you said the name, but yeah, it's there's too many. I'm very grateful to have so many, but it's always so hard to be like, what should you do? I don't remember. Is this one out yet? I don't know.
All the things. The things. Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, we have one compliment. No more questions from our wonderful audience today who have all been here and been delightful. Thank you all. But yes, Commodore Evie, you are both two perfectly lovely guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
because
much.
I'm a nerd in my own special way. I love Marcel Proust, and I like to finish up our interviews with my version of the Proust questionnaire. If you've ever read The New Yorker or gone to the Actors Studio, it's sort of inspired by that experience. So these questions are for both of you to field as you wish, and I recommend just going with what comes to you in your heart. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy the moment. They are ridiculous, and treat them as such. He was gay. We're all queer here. That's the vibe. So my first question for you both is, what are your favorite qualities in a human or a shifter or a dinosaur for that matter? We're very open here.
A sense of humor and empathy.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with that as well, since make me laugh and be a good person.
I love that. What do you appreciate the most in your friends?
Patience.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a willingness to let time go by, because you can't be with somebody all the time, and sometimes time passes, and you can't hold that against somebody.
That's beautiful. Those are both great qualities, and I love the way you put them. What is the virtue you strive for the most in yourself?
Patience.
Yeah. Patience and empathy. Just being able to see both sides and understand somebody, even if they're tricky.
Yeah. So, I feel that. What is your ideal way to pass an afternoon?
Video games.
Once upon a time, I would have said reading, but now that's my job. So now it's watching TV. I just want to zone out to some television.
Beautiful.
Mine's gaming.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Aren't you into Baldur's Gate, if I recall?
Oh,
God,
deeply.
don't
Oh my God,
you
hold
dare
on.
start that right now.
I just got
I
this
will
framed.
leave.
I don't know if you can see
Jesus.
it. It's my autograph. There it is. It's my Tav and Astarion because they're murder husbands. And I got Neil to sign it, and I got this frame. I just haven't hung it up yet.
So beautiful. Kirt, I will not keep us here very long as
Next
a courtesy.
question.
But Maz, I'm a Dragon Age girl, but I see you.
Oh, are you excited about Veilguard?
I have to wait. I'm told I must wait until I finish creating my latest big costume build, which is inspired by dragons. So it's appropriate. You know, take a dragon, throw it into a blender with gay people in bustle fashion and see what comes out. And that's
Love it.
what it's going to be. So, right. Okay. Kirt, moving on to the next question for you, my darling. What is your idea of happiness?
Happiness is a moment. It's a fleeting moment in which everything seems to be, you feel like you're in the right place at the right time and surrounded by the right people, but you can't hold on to it. You have to enjoy it and then let it go and wait for the next one to come.
Yeah, I love that.
It's beautiful. Maz, do you have an addition to that?
No, I think I was gonna say it's I think when you really reflect on it, it is something that's not permanent. It is something you're just gonna have to like allow yourself to enjoy because it is fleeting, but that's the nature of good things is that it just doesn't last. And that's okay. That means it will always mean a little bit more.
Beautiful. What is your idea of the lowest depths of misery?
No Wi-Fi.
Oh,
It's pretty bad.
yeah. I agree.
Organized sports.
Ew, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, no, pass me with the flag football. I am not good at these things. I will take the chaos of croquet, however.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. People just playing sports in their backyard, by all means, but
Yes.
like professional, commercialized, like NFL, MLB. No, thank you. I don't need any of that.
What is your personal motto?
Don't be a jerk.
Oh,
Okay, so I was going to say don't be a dick.
See,
Sort of
this is why we're
rule
friends.
number one
This is
is
why we
like,
have a
just don't be
podcast
dick,
together.
yes. Beautiful. All right. What is your favorite swear, your favorite curse? And you can be filthy.
Mine, I love. Mine is the word fuckery.
Oh,
I
Fuckery's
love
good.
making it a noun.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yes.
like, how long will this fuckery last? That's mine.
That's so
That's
good.
a good one. That's hard to top. Mine was probably
makes
just gonna be
it nice and
asshat because I say it
fancy.
a lot.
Ooh, asshat also very nice because it feels like an accessory, a moment. So, like maybe a bad accessory. So,
That's fantastic.
all right. And my final question for both of you is: what is your favorite adjective?
Oh, I don't know.
There are so many.
It's just, I'll just say kind.
Kind.
Yeah, I guess mine would be funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I love funny. Those are great answers. And remember, you're both perfect and beyond reproach. And all of your answers were exactly right. You both get big gold stars, A++, wonderful answers to the questionnaire. Proust would be confused but delighted, which is fine. That, I think, is how he lived his life. Thank you so much for making this time to be with us today and sharing your wonderful insights and just your delightful personalities with us. It was wonderful getting to chat with you. I'm so honored that I got to spend this morning, this time with you. Everyone, this interview will be archived forever on YouTube and the Book of Faces. Thank you for tuning in wherever you tuned in. This has been so lovely. Please be certain to go out and enjoy books by Maz and Kirt. Check out their podcast. Hoof and Fang is so lovely. Honestly, I've learned so much from listening to both of you, and I've been so inspired by your work. It has been a great honor and an absolute privilege to have you here today. Thank you for saying yes.
Same. Thank you so much for the opportunity
This has been
to chat.
so fun. Yeah.
It's lovely. It's lovely. Go check out their Patreon, check out the podcast, pick up the books. You may not have read any Dinosaur Shifter books yet. You need to. They're wonderful. They're also very smutty. It's so good. They're so good. So thank you both. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Or afternoon. I guess it's still daylight. Everyone, I will see you on the internet next week for Friday Tea. Book club is coming up at some point in October. We're reading a spooky book. It'll be great. We're reading Dreadnought by Sherry Priest. And also we'll have another sip to the tea coming in October with Liana Renee Heber to talk about spooky books because it's October and it's gay Halloween, Christmas, Fantasia. So, all right, everyone, take very good care. See you later. Cheers.